Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wonderful people. My name is Benjamin. Welcome to my book club. And today's video is one I'm a little bit nervous about making because today I'm going to talk about a few books that I didn't really like. I am of the opinion that there is enough negativity out in the world, there is enough negativity out on the internet especially, that I don't feel the need to add to it. I think perhaps making videos trashing every book I read or talking about all the horrible tropes in books that I read would perhaps get more traction. People like to be angry, people like to be negative, but that sort of content annoys me most of the time, so I'm never going to do that sort of thing. But on the flip side, if all I do is talk about the books I loved, if all I do is review the books I think were great, I also feel like that comes off as somewhat disingenuous. I think that showing you and talking about books that I didn't like and explaining why helps you to better understand whether our reading styles align, makes for some more interesting conversations, and helps us sort of suggest books to each other a little bit more successfully. That being said, I'm not just here to be negative and talk about a bunch of books I didn't like and, you know, crap all over them. What I'm going to do today is something I've done before, and I think this is probably going to be the format I'm going to go with for negative reviews in the future. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm going to talk about 3 books that didn't really tickle me the right way. 3 books I didn't really connect with like I was hoping I would. I'm going to briefly explain what they are and why they didn't work for me. And then I'm going to tell you 3 things that I did like about them. 3 things I thought they did do well. 3 things that might be the reason why you would like them. Because just because I don't like a book doesn't mean you won't like a book. Plenty of people hate books that I love. Plenty of people love books that I hate. All reading is subjective and everyone's experience is perfectly valid. All that being said, I think all of these books have good qualities and all of these books are gonna have fans. Let's start off with Lost Souls by Ryan Skeffington. Lost Souls explores a world where humanity as a whole has, I believe, been annihilated by something. We are now living as a species on a series of rings orbiting a central facility. Society is split into a caste system with the phantoms sort of at the very top. These are the highest echelon of society, the people producing the most valid research, the people with the most wealth. The spectres underneath them, the sort of what we would think of as maybe the 1%er if the phantoms are the ultra wealthy billionaires. And then below then we have the peasant class, the workers. And this really does seem to be a story about sort of class struggle and class warfare, with the core concept being this viral serum that has been developed that allows certain individuals to perform far beyond human norms. And in the story we are shown that this is most often used on the peasant classes to create better, faster, stronger workers who are more efficient while they're running, but the serum wears their bodies down and rapidly deteriorates them. And it is a story about the upper class not caring about that, about not being concerned that they're burning through workers, unnecessarily high quotas, low worker safety, high worker turnover, and all of that class stuff at its core I agree with, and I love that the book is exploring them. Where the book loses me is the sort of connecting tissue. I recently watched a video from the creators of South Park where they talked about if your story is a lot of and then. So like this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens, that it isn't that interesting. And that instead it needs to be like this happens, but then this happens. And because of that, this happens. Meanwhile, this happens, you know. This is a story of a bunch of very interesting plot points that we kind of just hit one by one, where the connecting tissue between them doesn't work for me. The dialogue doesn't really work for me. Most of the characters I found to be fairly light and two-dimensional. At a couple moments, I kind of felt like the continuity of the story broke down a little bit. I feel like maybe it just needed a couple more developmental editorial passes to be really up to the level I was really hoping for. But there are some things I really liked about it. To start off with, the very first chapter, the opening few pages of this book are sublime. They are fantastically written. The character waking up on this asteroid as humankind has left the Earth behind and is now on this asteroid and is shown what it is going to take to survive. The tone of that chapter and the way it is written is fantastic. It falls down because the chapter after that is probably my least favorite part of the entire book. We go from this dark, dreary tone to a scene kind of out of a Disney movie, out of a Disney TV show. The main character, who is so much smarter than everybody else, I don't really need to pay attention to class, is kind of dozing off in class and then goes out into the hallway and then beats up a bunch of bullies who are attacking someone he wants to be a friend with. And like he's doing the like leaning against the wall, acting all cocky, and then beats them up with no trouble, and it just, the tonal shift between that opening and then that second chapter are just whiplash, and the quality is just not the same. I said that this was kind of a book of just plot points and then the connecting tissue is an issue. That is true, but those plot points I think are fantastic. There is an excellent narrative here. It's just not quite fleshed out enough, I think. The actual story of these characters realizing what society they're in and then trying to rebel against it and how that comes about is really, really good. The overarching plot is really fantastic here. It is very interesting, and it is interesting enough that when the second book of this comes out, I think I will buy a copy and pick it up and read it, because I am interested in where this goes. And finally, the world building and the technology here is fascinating. The rings that we live on in this book are really, really interesting. The 𝕬𝕚𝕚𝕚 that everything is built out of is super fascinating. It is this material that takes kinetic energy that's put into it and then stores it, so then it can be put back out into the world in some fashion. One of the really cool examples of this is the sort of peacekeeping police forces weapons need to be, their body armor or their weapons needs to be hit with kinetic force to charge up the weapon. This is a really interesting way to do sort of lethal, non-lethal force with the police. The police can't just shoot you but unless you're attacking them first. It wasn't explored as much as I thought it could be, but it's a super interesting point that I hope gets touched on more as the series continues. Overall, Lost Souls gets it's like kind of like a 2 out of 10 for me. It has so much potential, so many good ideas. It just wasn't there. Up next is a book that I listened to on audiobook. I am a big fan of military sci-fi. My absolute favorite military sci-fi series is the Lost Fleet series by Jack Campbell, and I have been chasing that high ever since I read it. So I read Duel in the Dark by J. Allan. This is the first book of the Blood on the Stars series, which has, I think, about 7 million books, but has, I don't know, like 15 or something, has a lot of books. I was super excited about this because it is another spaceships fighting in space book, just like the Lost Fleet series. And as I said, I'm always looking for that. So while this book didn't quite work for me, and I am going to explain why, I am actually going to continue this series because there is promise here, and the moment-to-moment bits of actual combat I really enjoyed. In this story, we are set in the opening era of what might become a three-way war between the Confederation of Stars. This is a group of planets in a democratic government where the people are free and lovely and everything is great. There is hints of corruption at the governmental level, but overall, compared to its neighbors, this is the good guys. We also have the Union, the long-time enemies and rivals of the Confederation. They are sort of an oligarchy with sort of fascist oligarchy with very cyberpunky undertones. They have cloning. They are unscrupulous. They are very clearly the bad guys. And we have the Alliance. The Alliance is very clearly Roman influenced. They are military. Everything in their society is built around military and honor and tradition and conquest. And it is here we have our kind of main players. Our main character, Captain Baron, is the grandson of the most famous war general of all time from the Confederation, and due to his last name, he has been fast-tracked to promotion and is now the captain of a battleship, and he is in the back regions of the provinces, far away from the Union border, where a war is likely to break out to refit and repair when an attack comes from the Alliance. The Alliance has been offered to join the Union in an attack, and the Alliance is launching a sort of probing attack to see what the Confederation's defenses are like. And we now have a duel in the dark, roll credits, between two large battleships, their fighter escorts, and the fate of the Confederation is at stake. If the Alliance wins, they know that they can attack and they will wipe out the Confederation along with the Union. If the Confederation wins, then the Alliance will know that they cannot attack. And I have some problems. First off, the characters are the most generic, run-of-the-mill sci-fi characters. The captain is worried that he's there only because of nepotism, but is actually a fantastic captain whose entire crew respects him. He has a hard, no-nonsense, friend of his who is the first officer. There's a myriad of hothead jockey starfighters who are all bravado, and we have the hoorah, basically American Marines, who are just the most generic Marines I've ever heard of. And the actual spaceship combat, when it happens, is a little bit clunky here and there. Sometimes it feels like we're really caring and worrying about sort of like Euclidean forces, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we really care about acceleration and deceleration, and other times it feels like we're flipping 3.5 kilometer long battleships, just spinning them around with no care. But all that being said, there are some things I really like about it. First off, at a strategic level, the battles are fascinating. At a tactical level, really close to when the fighters meet each other, when the ships meet each other, there are some moments there that are a little bit iffy for me, but at a strategic level, the maneuvering around the system, the deciding on tactics, the fielding starfighter wings, all of that was fantastically done. Really enjoyed all of that. I also really liked the actual writing. The characters themselves I found to be very boring and generic, but the actual dialogue between those characters is about as good as I think those characters can communicate, and was enjoyable enough. There was a lot of repeating things. The captain will say something to the first officer who will then immediately say verbatim the same thing to another person, which is fine because that's how it would be, but when you're reading it, feels very repetitive. And at least 60 times throughout the book, someone will tell someone that this will take 20 minutes, and they'll say, you have 10 minutes, get it done. And that happens every single time. I also loved the political background, the wider political ramifications of the Union and the Alliance's possible alliance, and what that means for the Confederation, as well as the talk about free stars and the free star systems that are about, was really, really interesting, and I'm hoping to hear more about that as I continue on with the series. And also, I really did appreciate the focus on, like, engineering. There are a lot of engineering characters here, and a lot of time spent with the engineering teams on these ships that I really appreciated. Too often in these sort of things, we focus on the captain giving the orders and the starfighters and their ships, you know, fighting people, and really not many other characters. Here we did have a wider breadth of characters, and the focus on engineering and showing how without them maintaining the reactors, without them fixing the power conduits, nothing could be done, was really good. I don't know anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if the author either was or knows someone who was in the sort of engineering systems of the Navy, Army, something, because there is a clear love for that sort of aspect of the crew. Duel in the Dark overall gets a 4 out of 10 from me. It falls down in a few places, but it is just good enough in a genre I'm desperate for more of, that I am going to read book 2, and then from there I'll see how I feel going forward. I have a book that I read for my bingo competition. Here is my bingo board. This is Our Fantasy's bingo competition. It is 25 reading prompts with hard modes, and the idea is to force you to read books you may not otherwise have read. The challenge for this book was to read a book that was part of a read-along book club that the subreddit was doing. For that, I read Blackfish City by Sam J. Miller, which wins my best cover of the day competition. I think this cover is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. This book suffers from some of the problems that Lost Souls did, in that this is a series of very interesting, really well done plot points that just sort of happen one after another without a lot of reason, without a lot of connecting tissue to really draw me from one point to the other. In this story, we have a city in a post-climate disaster world. The city is in the Arctic Circle, it's floating, and again, we deal with issues such as class issues. We deal with the main class we're dealing with here are the sort of landlord elites, the landlord barons that we see in the world. And we deal with real estate hoarding, and we deal with issues surrounding that are all super important to me. And I think the book does just not quite enough to kind of expound upon them. The issues are here, and we're told how bad they are, but I don't think we explore the ramifications of them enough. I don't think we explore the reasons why they happened, the ways that we should tear them down as much as I was hoping we would. The book comes out of the gate feeling like it's going to have a very strong message on this, and I feel like I left without much of one. The characters themselves are fine. The first half of the book was a struggle for me. This book is an interesting look into how Booktube and YouTube itself has made me change my reading habits. Because if I'm honest, if I got to the halfway point of this book before this channel, I would have stopped. And because I wasn't engaged, I wasn't enjoying myself. The first half of this book, we follow all these different characters in their own individual stories, and they're not very connected, and it's kind of all over the place. But if I'd stopped, I would have missed the really good second half of this book. The second half of this book, when all these characters kind of finally meet up, their stories connect, starts making a lot more sense, is really enjoyable, but it is let down by how haphazard the first half of the book feels. I also really liked, as I said, the themes that were at play here. The anti-landlord class, the anti-sort of real estate hoarding. I liked the look at the inequality that was going on. I just wish we explored them more. I also loved the nano-bonded thing here. There is a group of people in this world that are nano-bonded with animals. These are nano-machines that are injected into both of them that then combine their consciousnesses in very interesting ways. And it isn't explored as much as I would have liked, but this is a really fascinating way to do sort of animal companions in a more sci-fi way. Animal companions are such a staple of fantasy that seeing them done here through technology is really interesting, and then using them as a way to show how mistreated and persecuted and genocided people that are different than the ruling class, people who are different than you, can be. And they were really, really, really well done. I would have loved a whole book based upon the sort of tribes of the nanobonded, but what we did get here was really good. And this is a bit tangential, but I did really enjoy doing this as part of the book club. I read and commented along with the book club during December as it was going on, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm going to be looking for more book club books I'm interested in reading in the future. Overall, Blackfish City gets a 3 out of 10 for me, but it almost gets more points just because of how much I liked the cover. So there you have it. I don't like being negative, but I hope that I gave enough positive points of these books to kind of counteract that. Honestly, these books are all very good in different ways, and I think that some people out there are going to love them, and I'm sure some people in the comments are going to be very upset with me for not liking them. Let me know in the comments if you read any of these. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you think about this sort of format for books. I'm thinking that if I read a book and I don't like it, I'm going to put it aside, wait until I've got 3 of them, and then do another one of these videos. I don't often read books I don't like, so I don't think or want to make many more videos like this. In a perfect world, I'd never make another one, but I think it's important to be honest with everyone out there and tell you the books that I didn't like and why. If you want to pick up a copy of any of these books, they are in the description below. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this or see any of my other reviews. Thank you so much for watching, and please keep reading.